And there is no doubt that perhaps one of the most important challenges is getting some financial help, not only if the project is in the seed phase or if it's a project that is in a more mature phase. That needs some acceleration. When we talk about public financing, we open a broad range of formulas from economic helps, direct economic helps, or through other formulas such as risk capital. We are lucky to have here today some experts that are going to be able to explain us what are these formulas or these lines. And we have representation of the three most important entities in the public financing area. So, for example, ENISA, which is the innovation public company, and Alberto Moratiel comes from this company. Also, ICO, the official credit institution, is sending us someone, also Rosalía Martos. And finally, we have the CDTI, and his representative, Raúl García Esparza. So the idea here is for them to expose us the financial lines, to explain us what are the possibilities for a startup and to access those lines, those channels, and then we'll open a debate so the audience can express some doubts about this. The presentation is going to be some brief. It's going to be a little bit brief, just as you're doing now, and we start now. So Alberto Moratiel, he comes from ENISA, the Innovation National Company, and it depends on the Tourism and Commerce Ministry, and he's responsible of the institutional relationships in ENISA, and he is in charge of spreading the financial lines, emphasizing the young entrepreneurs. So Alberto, whenever you want. Thank you, Rosalía. So first of all, just to comment, we share a name with ENISA, the Security Agency of Europe, and although the name is the same, our activities are very different. They depend on the European Commission, and we depend on the Ministry of Industry and Tourism. And within this, we are engaged into the small and medium companies. So all our activities and financing is focused to the small and middle companies. And we do this through the participative loan, and although it has the participative remark there, and we can think that with our participation we get into the equity or the CE or the committee, the directive committee. That is not so. We are just talking about the interest. We have three main lines of work, and we try to cover all phases of a company, some for the young entrepreneurs, and then some for companies that are not so young, and then the growing line. We do it through the same channels, the participative loan, with some concrete characteristics. For example, some doubts that are ordinals, and the ending periods are quite wide, so we try not to choke the company from the very beginning. And we go from 25,000 euros to 1.5 million euros. So we don't go above or below these boundaries. We are a rather small company. Our figures in business is quite wide, around 100,000 millions of euros per year, so we can finance near 600 projects per year. We don't have headquarters around the national territory, so we receive everything through our online website. And with the business plan that they send us, the request is considered made. So this is the main characteristic of our company. Well, thank you. When you talk about young entrepreneurs or young projects, what are we talking about? 2, 3, 5 years? So I didn't get into the specific characteristics of each line, but for young entrepreneurs, we talk about companies that are less than 2 years of age, and their main promoters should be under 40 years of age. And for the entrepreneur line, erasing the young characteristics, we expect for the company to have less than 2 years of experience, and we erase the limit of the age of the participants. And does the company need to be already constituted? Yes, of course. We don't put any financing for freelancers, just for small and medium companies, but the company must be already constituted. We don't mention any specific ideas, but we don't offer any help. It's a financing product, so they have to return it with some interest that we agree after that. We don't request for any guarantees, but the money has to be returned. So another difference is that with the ICO is that the company, once they receive the financing, they signed directly with us, not with any intermediary. Well, thank you very much. Next is Raúl García Esparza, Cybersecurity Responsible and Promotion and Cooperation Direction of the CDTI. He's going to speak to us about the entrepreneur lines of the Industrial and Technology Development Center, which depends on the Science and Innovation and Universities Minister. Well, thank you, Soledad. CDTI, it's a public company. Our main goal is to support companies that do research and development, and for this we give some financing for the projects. Specifically, after 1 year, we end up financing 1,000 million euros in this type of projects, and we pay special attention in young entrepreneurs, and we define this not by the age of the participant, but on the age of the company. So we have 3 lines to be able to finance this project. One, the most important, it's Neotech. It's a financing area which is financed with without any risk for 250,000 euros, and they are for companies between 6 months and 3 years. It's a very competitive help, and this year we closed it on October 2nd. We usually open around June and July, and it's a period of assessment for the resolution usually takes place between February and March of next year. So this year, with 25 million euros, and that allows us to finance 120, 130 companies, depending on the project. Then we have Invest. This is a way of helping companies to accelerate themselves more for the development, for companies that are more mature, not a startup, and it's about 500 million euros, and it's growing, and it's for companies that start from the initial period to a more mature. And then we have a third line for more mature company that is for innovation lines. We're talking about projects. It's a loan, not participative loan. It's a loan under some interest, with a very long-term evolution, more than 5-7 years, with a 0% interest, and we cover the research and development project of the company. And part of that credit does not need to be returned. It can be 20 or 30%, depending on the company. We have other lines, but those are the ones that fit better in the startups.
lo que he querido entender y por como ha sido así muy rápido y a veces de tal manera que desde CDTI se proponen 3 líneas.
So from CDTI, there are 3 lines, direct financing area. Then we have a second line, which is a capital risk formula, which would be for more mature projects. And then the third line, which is the more open lines for innovation, where we are talking about loans with 0% interest and fixed. I have a doubt, however, between the loan to a 0% interest and the participative loan that Alberto mentioned. Well, I understand the 0 interest loan. It's a loan that you signed with CDTI for 5 to 7 years, and you have to return the capital. And for the participative loan, it's not at a 0% interest. You have to 3-5% interest, and you have to return it in a period of 7 years, depending on what you agreed. So it depends usually on the loan on itself. So I think the most important difference here is that our vehicle is at a 0% interest because we are focusing on the research and development part of the company. So we are working on an instrument that is focused on this area. We cannot get into the market. We just finance the research part of the company. And now we go with Rosalía Martos. She comes from the Official Credit Institute that depends of the Ministry of Economy and Taxes, and she has a big trajectory and a big experience in this, and she works in the mediation area with financial institutions, and she has to put in shape the management lines of the ICO. Exactly. Well, ICO, it's a public bank that is subscribed to the Economy and Business Ministry. It is financed in the international capital markets. It is important to highlight this because we established agreements with multilateral organizations so we can get some advantages that we can put onto the final customers, and within our goals is to be able to empower and develop the business network in Spain. It's true that currently we are in a period of time where there is a huge variety of financing in the market for companies. Companies have many different ways of getting some finances, either public or private institutions, and ICO, it's one more alternative for freelancers and companies, and it's compatible and complementary to other public financing, and it's also compatible with some other help that they can get from other organisms. So the value for freelancers and companies is that in our case we establish a framework of transparent conditions for freelance people and for companies, and so that they can see at every moment which is the TAE max that they can apply to their operations, and they have the option to choose rentability time frames, and they also have the security of seeing that they have the same conditions independently if they are in a geographical region or another, or if they work in a different sector or another. So what we do is establish a framework of very transparent conditions for freelance and companies. All sort of companies fit in here, all sort of sizes. But the truth is that when we analyze the data, we always see that 99% of the ICO requests are from small companies or micro companies up to 9 employees or freelancers. So what we are seeing is that It's they help the small companies that are the ones that have more problems to negotiate their conditions, and it is also a framework that is quite useful for small companies, for everyone, but we see that the most proportion of companies that are using this are small companies. On the other hand, you were talking about how to request the loans, how do they reach the end customers. We only have one office in Madrid, but during the years we've seen that the best system for us is the public-private cooperation. So ICO establishes the conditions of the financing contracts agreements, and the conditions are more and more flexible and always transparent, very clear. And it is through the entities of credit that cooperate with us, the ones that establish the credits with us. So this system of public and private credit, it's been a referent in financing. So we see that it's working. We also finance. As I said, we are more flexible now, so we finance almost everything that is needed for the company. We have divided the lines into big blocks, so we try to empower companies or entrepreneurs or businessmen, not only nationally but also abroad. So we treat them to externalize their activities. So we have our lines divided into national and international, and what we offer financing for, it's everything, because we try to go to the full project. So not just the machinery or the tools, but the money that you need to start the project, for staff, for raw material. So basically, we just offer financing for the whole project. Freelancers also have the option to request financing for these type of things with a limit time of 4 years. And I also wanted to highlight that it is possible to finance at a short term the selling, not only by pre-financing a good that you're going to sell, but the anticipation of getting of those invoices for that sale. We have started a new system to support the internationalization process of Spanish companies, which through an international channel we are supporting the Spanish interest companies. We have established agreements with multilateral organizations and international banks such as CAF, BCI, Sabadell, Miami, Banco Mex, with which the companies that have some Spanish interest and that are working abroad, they can get in touch with these banks and directly to request some financing from them through the Ecoline. So we are trying to increase the support to national companies, but also to the internationalization of the Spanish companies. Also, what we are seeing, especially this last year, is that we have financed about 49,000 million euros, and this year we have financed
Apologies because you couldn't hear me. Well, as I was saying, these are the details of what we're offering now. We are working on something because we've noticed that markets have been normalized. There is an easiness and a wealth of different types of credit, and from the ICO, because we want to promote the growth of companies, we are working on supporting credit lines that are about sharing risks with private banks or giving support to the private banks, giving collateral so that it's easier to get financing. So, in a nutshell, the credit lines at ECO are transparent. They have long deadlines of repayment in 20 years, and we wanted them to be to have the same conditions regardless of where you are located in the country. Thank you very much, Rosalía. As a brief summary before we open the floor for debate, in the public funding field we've seen different formulas, different ways of doing it: zero interest loans, financing with PPPs, direct loans. This is great news for entrepreneurs. But we open the floor for debate to see if anyone is interested in asking a question, because I do have a few questions. No questions? I will make a few questions and you can give me the answer. So we're talking about entrepreneurship, and you've been talking about entrepreneurship in general terms, young project, innovative projects, R&D and I. But how does it fit in each case? How does it a startup, an entrepreneur startup fits in with the cybersecurity project? Are there any limitations? Well, we haven't verticalized per sector the credit lines, so they can adhere to any of the credit line. We see cybersecurity as a very transversal sector, and any company could be in it. So sometimes maybe cybersecurity companies give very specific services. But it's as with any company, we finance any activity sector except the real estate sector and the financial sector. So there will be no difference if it's a cybersecurity project. We've given credit for companies from the ENISE. We are comfortable with them because they are innovation companies that have that are scalable and that have been there in the long run, and we want to fund them. As ENISE, we finance all sectors. But it's true that the cybersecurity sector is very technological and innovative. So when there is a cybersecurity company, there's almost no limitation because they're pure technology. It's true that there are projects where cybersecurity is only a part of the project. So we also can give credit to that company, to that project. In terms of R&D and I, there's not many projects in cybersecurity in this field, not as many as we wanted, but we are seeing an increase in projects that use cybersecurity as one of the themes and modules that fit in their project. So, for example, in IoT, robotics, maybe there are not companies that are all about cybersecurity, but cybersecurity is a part of the project. In our case, they also fit in the ECO's credit lines. It depends on whether the company works at a national level or an international level, because then there's different lines. But like them, we don't have specific credit lines for each sector, because each sector requests funding depending on their needs. To give you a few more details about the ICT sector, in the ICO's credit lines, we funded 4.5% of the financing went to the ICT sector, which is around 180 million euros, not only in cybersecurity, as I was saying, they can fit in our credit lines. I wanted to say that we don't have a minimum account for funding. There is a maximum of 12.5 million euros, so there is a large margin. And I think that that's it from me. When you say that there is no limits, minimum limits, you mean that a startup, even though if they're very small, they could get investment from those credit lines from the ICO? Yes, from just €1. There is no cap. There is only a maximum. We do have a limit, which is 175,000 euros. From there upwards, it depends on the sector. This is quite high, but for an R&D and I project, in a year you already cover that limit. So it depends if the project is a 1 year, 2 year, or 3 year project. So for us, the average loan is 57,000 euros. We do have one question. Hello. Just a short question. How do you value the work with crypto assets? Can you ask the question again? The eco funding through cryptocurrency, crypto assets, do you work with it? No, we don't. And I don't have a positive or negative opinion on it. We just use the assets that are in the balance. We understand that cryptocurrency are not represented, so we don't make any positive or negative remarks. It's the same for us. We work with credit entities that have a banking file, and when the other entities get regulated, maybe we could work with them. It's the same for us. Any other questions? Well, I do have one. There's many ways of getting private financing for startups, for risk capital. What are the advantages? I think they're clear, but if you have to summarize the advantages of public funding, could you do that for me? Well, as you are saying, it's an alternative funding, so it doesn't use the leverage for the future. But the credibility of our entities is good because it can validate the business. If we add also the equity of the promoters of the project, the liquidity, I think these are very good advantages. So they can ask for funding in their own financial group. Yes, as Alberto was saying, I completely agree. It's the same in the CDTI. It gives you prestige. But when you have a grant, when you're a neo-tech, you get disruptive support. If you are a disruptive company, then getting 70% support is very good. Neotech, there was 350 projects and we funded 100 of them. So you have a 30% of success rate. There are 70% there. It's not financiable. So sometimes it's just financing. So we'll end with ECO. Rosalía, if she wants to add something. Well, the advantages of the ECO funds, the credit lines, are, as I was saying, that you have a framework of transparent conditions. You always have an updated, published rates of interest that you can use with the bank. They're always there in the website, and you know that you have conditions that are equal regardless of whether you work in one province or another in Spain or in different sectors. We have another question from the public. Thank you very much.
Fundamentalmente, consultar.
I am the CEO of an Argentinian-Chilean company located here in Madrid. We work in cybersecurity, and I would like to know what the possibilities are, taking into account that we are starting out and we don't have a turnover here in Madrid. What are the likeliness of accessing your benefits? Well, in our case, the company has to have a Spanish registered address. It does have, so then you can have a possibility of getting our funding. When we assess the companies, we don't look at the balances and quantities. We see the qualitative aspect of the project. Where does it come from? What's the product? What's the internationalization of the team? We value this, we assess it, and then we can say if we can invest in that company. It's the same for us. As long as you have the national address, then it's fine. It depends on the type of funding that you want to apply. In some projects, when you get a loan, we need someone responsible, and there will be a financial assessment of the company for the past 3 years. In this case, because it's a young company and it doesn't have any turnover, then there will have to be guarantors. Are you working within the national territory? Indeed. Then you would fit in the entrepreneurs and companies credit line, because you are working here. Well, and we don't demand anything else. You have to have an economic activity. Although it's true that the credit lines are requested through the collaborating credit entities, they will be the ones starting the operation. We have two options. We have the company line, and if it's difficult to get funding, you have another line of guarantees that could enable this funding. Thank you very much for your reply. Well, we were talking about the advantages and the good things about public funding, but to play the devil's advocate, when we discuss public funding, it's said that small companies, because the large ones have financial departments and economic departments with experience, but it's said that the small companies, the small entrepreneur that needs to start making contacts with the entities that are here today, when they have to initiate the process of applying for help, it's complex. Do you have any projects to simplify this process? Well, we understand that we're accessible to the entrepreneurs, but it's true that they have to have some kind of financial skills to get the funding. If they don't have those skills, well, they have marketing skills maybe, and they have to sell. They could outsource those financial skills, but we don't have very difficult requirements not to accept them. Maybe the obstacle that we have, our Achilles tendon, is that we are not an emergency funding option. If you need money tomorrow, then maybe my entity is not the one that you have to to go to? Well, in the case of CDTI, we have a cooperation group that says that gives advice to companies. We have Neotech, Invierte, and R&D projects, but the company needs to contact us directly. We have a very direct access with the company. They can contact us, tell us what's the idea for their project or the innovative idea, and we will tell them which is the best line for them to get funding, because it's not the same to having a very intensive project of buying technology assets. It depends on what they need. When they apply for it, I don't think it's very problematic, but we have to ask for the closed accounts, but not so much in the financial aspect. We put our focus on the technology aspect, and we do an assessment for 2-3 months. When we talk about funding projects, as I was mentioning in Neotech, we look at grants that have a span of 4 or 5 months. In our case, as I was saying, the lines are processed through the collaborating credit entities, and the processing is quite simple. You only need to provide details as if you were applying for a private credit. And in the case of financing an investment, you have to certify that you've done the investment, and then it will depend on the entity in terms of the timescale, but it doesn't take too long. It's like a regular credit from that entity. So we have to stick to the time we've had allocated. I only want to thank you for your collaboration. I think this has been a very interesting and clarifying panel for those interested in public funding. Thank you very much for all the participants and attendees. Thank you very much.